Welcome everyone, I am Tock Custom, and on this video we're going to teach you how to embroider your own flat-brimmed hats using the Brother PR-1055X embroidery machine. This is really actually very easy, and I'm happy to show you step by step how to do it. So here is everything that comes with the flat brim hat pack. Keep in mind there is another pack for like knit and winter hats, but this is the one for like baseball hats. To explain what everything here is, this will mount to your table, which will help you get your hat ready to be mounted onto this, which will actually bolt to your machine, and this turns, which helps the machine embroider your hat. And this is what your hat will be mounted into this harness here, which is really nice. You should also have a rubber washer, which is going to help space things. I'll explain that in a moment. 2 Allen wrenches, a little screwdriver, and then your bolts for getting this onto your machine. All right, so here we are at our Brother 1055X 10 needle embroidery machine. They also have a harness for the 6 needle and I think the single needle model of these, but we're using the 10 needle for this video. We are going to start with the mounting bracket, so you'll need this piece here, and this is what's going to clamp onto the machine. So I'm going to kind of zoom into here right now, and we're going to take a look at how this goes in. All right, I think this is a pretty good angle. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna slide this mount right over the center part of where the bobbin casing is. Now this bracket kind of makes like a sandwich right here where my index finger is. So I'm gonna kind of sandwich that like this. And there's a couple of little notches. Let me zoom here. So on the right side, there's a metal pin right here. And we're gonna put this hole right here over that metal pin. So that's going to sit in there like that, and then there's one on the other side, and then there should be a piece of metal that kind of goes underneath here. So that should hold it in place until we put our bolts here. All right, so using our smaller bolts, I'm going to put one on the right side of that pin that we just put into place here. Excuse my hand being in the way. And then on also the right side of the other pin, I know you can't really see it, but we're going to tighten that there as well. All right, so I'm kind of underneath the front of the machine, and there's 2 more bolts that we need to put into place. So I'm gonna kind of zoom into where one of these goes. And right in this channel here, there's an opening underneath there. So I'm gonna kind of move the wheel here until that lines up. And we're gonna put that in there. I forgot to do this the first time I made hats, and it created a lot of problems, so make sure you do this. All right, so again, looking from underneath, these are the 2 bolts that we're putting here. Try to push the wheel as far back as you can so that this is nice and straight, like that. Okay, so now that your hat rack is installed, we need to balance it or zero it out. So you're gonna grab your 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench here that they gave you, and there's 2 little hexagon bolts back here. So I'm going to loosen these each. All right, so we're just gonna loosen these. You don't have to take them out. Just make sure they're nice and loose like this. And then this part on top should kind of move around like that. So all you have to do is press your finger on it and hold it down real tight. And then we're just going to tighten these bolts. And this is just going to help balance the machine so that everything turns out nice and straight. Okay, so that is done. There's one more thing we have to look at, and there's a little bit of a gap right at the top part where the metal just barely clears this plastic here. So we need to make sure that this is balanced, and that's the last part of setting this up. So to make sure there's a big enough gap in this clearance here, there are 4 bolts. Here's 2 of them. I'll show you all 4 in a moment. It's just dark in there. Now all we're gonna do is we're gonna use our 3 millimeter Allen wrench, and we're gonna loosen all 4 of these, just like we did the other ones, without taking them out. Now all 4 of those bolts are loose, so this thing should kind of move around like this, which is very good and very normal. Now to space this all properly, you need your rubber washer here. So I'm going to kind of lay this flat on the bridge here, and we're gonna lift up the hoop and slide the washer under so it's right in the middle. Now I'm just pushing up on the bottom of that hoop. We're gonna slide this in so just the tab of that rubber comes out like that. And that's going to hold it in place for us to tighten the screws that we just loosened. Again, while that rubber washer is in there creating that separation, we're going to use our 3 millimeter Allen wrench to tighten each of those 4 screws that we had just loosened. And these don't need to be over tightened, just as long as they're firm. Very good, so all of our bolts are tightened and this thing should be all zeroed out and balanced. So now I'm just gonna pull out the washer with that little tab like this and we can put this aside. Ooh, I almost forgot. My machine came with this little spacer here that goes over the bobbin. Make sure you don't lose this, and this has to be in place anytime you're embroidering hats. So make sure that you've got that little black clip there, and that'll stay there for all of your hat embroideries. The next thing you'll need is your mounted hat rack here. So out of the box, it comes like this, which is fine, and this part here clamps onto your table. But underneath there are 4 bolts, and I think they just do this because it saves space in shipping. But you have to just loosen these 4 screws here. And again, you don't have to take these out just so they're loose. Now we're going to just kind of extend this like that, and then we're going to tighten these screws back. Now, as far as I know, you shouldn't ever need to do this again, so I've just left it like this since I got it. Now, I got the big mounted table with my machine, so all you're gonna do is take the clamp side with the screw on the bottom, and I'm just gonna clamp this kind of off to the side like that. So this should be nice and sturdy right here, and we're gonna be using this to mount our hats onto our harness. Now that you have this mounted, we're going to take the bottom of the harness, which is this piece here, and we're going to slide it right onto the cylinder. And there are some clips on the top and on the bottom. So I'm going to press the top and then the bottom, and it'll click into place like that. Now I'm going to assemble this without the hat so that you can see how this comes together. But this is the top of the harness, and there are these little channels right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide these on either side. And this is what's going to mount your hat to the harness. Now, once I push this down, it's going to start to click into place like that, and it will not come up. So that's kind of locked into place there. So on the bottom of our harness, there is a lock and unlock here. So if I unlock this, I will be able to take this off and also to take my hat out. And when I'm getting ready to embroider, I want this to be in the locked position when we put our hat in here like this. So now we just need the top of our harness here and this flat brim hat. I'm pretty sure any one of these will do. These snapback ones are really nice because they open up in the back. And it's worth mentioning that there's a pretty stiff stabilizer in here, so you don't have to stabilize this for embroidery, which you would normally have to do. Now what we want to do first is we're going to kind of untuck the front lining of this hat. And this doesn't want to stay there, but we're going to kind of make it. And we're going to hold that lining open like that and position the top harness right over the top of the brim. Now this hat has a nice center seam here, which is easy to see, and there's a notch right here. So we can just match that up perfectly, which makes this really easy for this demo. Now on the side of your harness, there's a little bit of a gap right here. And what we want to do is we're gonna untuck the lining of our hat and we're gonna kind of slide it right between that slot there. Okay, we're going to kind of pull it nice and tight, and we're going to follow this around while keeping that center seam there. Pull that tight one more time. Now we're going to follow this around to the left. Again, I've still got the lining kind of unfolded here. We're going to grab the lining and put it in the slot on the other side. So it should look something like that. Now this is the part where if something's off-centered, you can fix it right now. So I'm going to kind of just straighten up the hat, make sure my notch is in the middle, tighten up these little lining sides on the seams. The cleaner you get this to look, the more centered and cleaner your embroidery will be. All right, so that looks pretty good like that. That's exactly what we're looking for, and this should kind of stay in place. So I'm going to set this down while we get ready to mount this. All right, so simply we are just going to slide the hat onto the cylinder right here. Now keep in mind, I've got the lining, so it is still unfolded, and it's gonna stay that way all the way up to the front right here. I know it might be hard to see. There you go. So I've got the lining unfolded, and that's gonna kind of match up with this stopper right here. Now underneath the machine, we're going to lock this so that as we put the bracket on, it's going to stay in place. So I'm going to slide the right side of that in, and the left side, and just kind of slowly press down. Kind of works like handcuffs, where once you go down, it's just not going to come back. So this is going to kind of click slowly, and I don't want to go too fast here. Now, as I'm pushing this down, I want to make sure that this is pressed, you know, towards the brim of the hat and that everything looks flat. I'm going to press this down way too far, and I don't know if you can see this, but if you go too far, you'll notice the fabric starts to kind of pucker and ripple, and that's not good. You're going to get a really weird embroidery if you do that. So I'm going to unlock the harness and pull it up a little bit. Now we're going to relock it. Now again, I'm going to slowly go down. So that looks pretty even, and it's still secure. There's also 2 bolts right in the center of the cylinder, and if you can feel them, they should be right in the center seam of your hat. So that is perfectly centered. I'm going to tighten this a little bit more. All right, so now I'm happy with this. That should be good to go. I forgot to mention your mounting unit should have come with these little clips here, and these are going to kind of hold the front of the hat nice and tight so that we get a nice smooth embroidery. So right on the bottom here, I can kind of reach around and feel there's kind of like this metal bar right here. So I'm going to pull the hat nice and tight and kind of tuck it up underneath that where my thumb is. And we're going to put a clip right there. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And I've got a couple extra clips just to make sure that stays nice and tight. I'm just going to look this over one more time and make sure everything is right down the middle and everything is nice and tight. My clips are in place. Now this is ready to go, so we can pop this off the cylinder. Before I take this off, I always make sure that my harness is locked, which it is, and to get it off, I'm just gonna pull it kind of from the bottom, and then there's this metal rim right here, and I'm just gonna kind of pull that, and it should just slide right off like that. All right, so to get our hat harness onto the machine, we're just going to slide the opening of the cylinder while turning the brim of the hat to the side like that. And then once it has cleared all of your needles and there's this kind of triangle part here, we're going to straighten that up so the brim is upright. And now, just like on the cylinder that we mounted, there are the same clips. So I'm just going to press this so it'll snap onto place just like that on the top and bottom. All right, so we've got everything mounted. I should have mentioned this earlier. Make sure you've got a full bobbin before you mount your hat. It's kind of hard to swap it out once you're in the middle of an embroidery. But once you got that set, your hat should look something like this once you get it on your machine. Now, this is very important. Every time I embroider a hat, I always turn off and turn my machine back on. What this is going to do is it's going to power cycle the machine. It's going to recenter your hoop, which is really important. Sometimes it'll move while you're installing it. So I want this to recenter the hoop as we get ready to do our first embroidery. So now the hoop is centered and everything should be aligned. So now we can pick our embroidery design. So I've got a little Brother logo here, which will match the blue on this. It's important to note that the embroidery area on this is 5 1/8 by 2 3/8, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it does go a long way and it will wrap around the hat, which is really cool. So I'm going to scale this logo down a little bit. And then you'll notice when you hit edit end, it's going to flip your design upside down because your hat is technically upside down in the machine. And something else that I notice is if I move this up, or in that case down, it'll go towards the brim. And I want that to be kind of as close to the brim as I can. Maybe not all the way. So something a little bit higher up is going to show up closer to the brim. So I'm going to hit embroidery. And I've already got all my threads set up. It's only one color, so we're going to match this blue. And then I'm just going to hit lock, and we're going to start our embroidery. So now that this is done, we can unmount it. So I'm going to pull up from the bottom and then kind of from the top. Then again, we're going to turn the brim to one side and pull it out just like that. And we can unmount this now. Okay, so we're going to take these clips off first, and then we're going to unlock this harness. Now I'm just going to kind of hold this and push up on those two prongs, and this should just slide right off like that. Now we're just going to take the lining out of the sides, And this should just slide right off. Now, after straightening my hat a little bit, now we've got our embroidered hat that looks just like this, and there's only one little thread for me to clip here. So there you go, we have our embroidered brother hat, which looks really good. And again, there is no stabilizer on the inside. It just kind of mounted just like that. Make sure your lining is in place and your hat is done. Here's a bunch of examples of some hats. And again, we did all of these hats in one day. Once you have the harness set up, you can just swap it out and it's really easy. I did buy a pack of, I think, 12 variety hats online for like 15 bucks. Just to do a bunch of quick, cheap, easy hats, so you can easily do that to practice. This was really fun and a lot easier to teach than I thought it was going to be. Okay, so we're all set. Hopefully this helped you make some hats. If you have any questions about this process, please let me know. I don't really wear hats because I think they make me look weird, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to put on a hat with my logo that I made. So, from me to you, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you guys make some cool hats. Thank you very much for watching this video, and we will see you in the next tutorial. Do people still wear hats with the brim really flat? When I grew up, we wore hats nice and curved like this. Is this more appropriate? I don't know. I still look ridiculous either way, so whatever.